Hi everyone, and in this video I'm going to be discussing why some people may have more prominent symptoms in certain environments than other environments. Now, there is a lot of judgment around this. Some people might think that because you show more tics or other symptoms in one environment, it might mean that there's something wrong with that environment. That is not true at all. For example, when I was in primary school, I used to tic more at home. Now, reasons for this usually include some sort of suppression. Suppression can be very harmful and uncomfortable, and it doesn't stop the tics because they do have to come out later, and they almost always come out a bit worse than they would have before if you actually let them out. So if someone's maybe in school, if it's a young person or if they're in college or something, and if they're trying to suppress, or even if they're subconsciously suppressing, then that will build up over the day, and then when they're in a safe and comfortable environment, they'll let their symptoms out, and that actually means that they feel more comfortable at home. So contraspression is where you're suppressing sort of on purpose because you don't want to let your tics out. Subconscious suppression is where you have an internal fear of judgment, but you may not actually be aware that you're suppressing until it's too late and your symptoms will come out in explosions. Possibly another reason that someone might show more symptoms at home if suppression isn't a trigger, then someone may have a lot of sensory stimuli in the home. Somebody might have scented products, maybe an air freshener that causes some sensory issues and might make you tic more in a certain environment, but that still doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the environment. The environment's fine. It's just about finding what might be triggering them to become worse. And also some allergens. Some people might have certain allergens in the home that can trigger tics as well for some individuals. And yeah, as I was saying, there is a lot of judgment around this. For me, for many, many years, I wasn't formally diagnosed with Tourette's until I was 15 years old, so I went through many years of psychiatrists and psychologists judging my family because my symptoms showed up more in the home than in other environments. And it was horrible for them, obviously, because my parents were made to feel like it was their fault and they were sent to family counselling, and the psychologist kept saying that it's learnt behaviour, but it's not. It's not learnt behaviour in the slightest, and there's nothing wrong with the home. It's a neurological condition that can sometimes have a genetic predisposition. So it's not learnt behaviour in the slightest, because we don't want to be doing it, and we don't learn it off anyone else, we just can't control it. Although, of course, you can pick up tics for other people, but that's still not learnt behaviour because we can't control it. So there is a lot of judgment, and my psychiatrist actually threatened to put me in a care home when I was 12 years old. And they were just really horrible and rude to my parents and stuff as well. So they were just awful, unfortunately. And they just really didn't understand my condition. So that's why it's important to see a specialist who does actually understand. And I usually say that if a doctor starts treating you horribly or seems to misunderstand or starts pointing the finger or judging, then you should probably find another doctor because they might be able to help you even more. Because if you're being judged, then you might not get as much out of treatment or support as you would have if you had a good doctor. But then some people do also tic more in public. For me, between the ages of 14 and 15, my tics would absolutely explode in public. I did still tic at home, but most of the time it was quite mild, except for when I would have some outbursts at home where they would become very, very severe. But in public, almost as soon as I'd step out into a public building, my tics would absolutely explode, especially the vocal ones. This can sometimes be triggered by light sensitivity, because if you're going into a building maybe with a lot of fluorescent lights, if you're affected by photosensitivity or Irlen syndrome, then it may trigger more tics. So let me quickly say, photosensitivity is the sensitivity to flashing, flickering and fluorescent lights. So for those individuals, those lights can worsen tics, and I found for me that wearing amber rose glasses help with that, and sometimes if you cover one eye it can help because a photosensitive reaction usually only occurs if it's viewed through both eyes. However, with Irlen syndrome, which is scotopic sensitivity syndrome, any sort of overwhelming or bright light can trigger symptoms, and not just tics but loads of other symptoms as well, such as hyperactivity, anxiety and visual distortions. So that can be something to look into, and that might explain for some people why they tic more in public places, like with bright lights and stuff. Also, there's loud noises as well can affect some people, and not just loud noises, but also complex noises, which can overwhelm your brain. Social anxiety is another factor. This was, this is put down to a lot, but sometimes it isn't necessarily, because I know when I was trying to figure out why I was ticking more in public, a lot of people said, oh, it must be social anxiety, but I don't have social anxiety. I'm actually quite a confident person, although I am very socially awkward, so it was mainly sensory based for me. But social anxiety might be a factor for other people, crowds as well. And for me, I find that tics seem to want to be the centre of attention. That does not mean tics are attention seeking. They are not. They are involuntary. But for example, if you're with loads of people, my tics tend to become louder because for some reason they want to be heard. And I see my Tourette's as like, it is part of me, but I see it kind of as a separate thing. Like I say before, it was like a 3-year-old trying to mortify me, because the more people there are, the louder it'll get, because it seems to just want to mortify me and disrupt everyone, which I don't, but my Tourette's does. So it's a different thing. Obviously, there's no intention behind tics, but the Tourette's just wants to annoy me, and in turn, unfortunately, can annoy others, although that is never the intention, and it annoys us more than it annoys anyone else, because we're the ones who have to deal with it 24/7. Also with rage attacks can predominantly occur more in one environment than others. There are loads of different triggers for that, for rage attacks, but for me I found that it would happen more at home, and I don't think I've ever had a rage attack in school, just at home, but that isn't a problem at home. It's not a parenting problem. But unfortunately, so many parents are judged. My parents were told that it must be a parenting problem or something, and it's not. It's simply because over the day, I was building up all the anxiety, all the frustration, all the triggers, and then at home, I felt safe to let it out because I knew I wouldn't be judged, and because my parents are amazing. But because of that, rage attacks explode out, and they are uncontrollable. We can't help it. It's not a behavioural problem. That's why it's not a parenting problem, and discipline doesn't help. It may actually make it worse for some people because it can frustrate us even more, because during a rage attack, we don't have any rational thinking or action, so you can't reason with us, and also, we feel guilty anyway, you know. If we're punished for it, then it might make us feel even worse about it. But yes, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't take responsibility for it, because usually if you're old enough, you all know it's wrong, but it's different for everyone. But I would say that punishment is never an answer for rage attacks, because we can't help them. But yes, I hope this video is informative, and these are just some reasons why someone might tic more in one environment than others, because tics do wax and wane. And in some environments they can become worse than others. So usually you can look for triggers or try and overcome any suppression, because suppression can be really harmful for some people, especially myself. And also maybe if it's triggered by social anxiety or something, you could get help with that to see if it also lessens the tics in turn. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it helped. Bye!